Welcome to the Manders Mindset Podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Hey guys, welcome to Amanda's Mindset. As always, I'm your host, Amanda Russo. And we are here for the second time with Rachel Varitimos. Riverside gave us an issue the last time and kicked me out, but I believe in the synchronicities of the world, and I have had the opportunity to do a birth chart reading with Rachel since then. So we're going to discuss that and about her journey. She is an astrologer. She's also an Enlifted Certified Coach. You guys have heard some of the Enlifted Certified Coaches on the podcast already. And I am here with Rachel today.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being here with me. So I'd love if we could touch upon a little bit about your background, your upbringing, your family, and anything in terms of that.
Yeah, so I have a really long story background of how I got here to be an astrologer and personal development and all that. So when I was a child, I was obese, and it's actually written in my birth chart, not to be obese, but how I felt as a child, which was very confused. Maybe anyone listening to this can relate, but feeling like I'm in the sea most of the time, not feeling like I can relate with normal people, watching people having conversations and wondering how they're doing that because I was just swimming in this sea of confusion as a child. Now that I'm into astrology, I understand it's because I have Neptune on my IC. So if anyone in here watching this has Neptune in their fourth house or close to their IC, that can cause a very dreamy childhood, very connected to other worlds. So I was obese. I didn't know why I was obese. So I found this weight loss camp. It was called Camp Shane in New York. It told me if I went, I'd lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks. And I wanted that. I wanted to be like the other kids. So I asked my parents if I could go. And they said yes. And I went for the 6 weeks. And I lost 23 pounds. And I ended up becoming obsessed with nutrition and fitness, but not in a healthy way, because I kind of learned to lose weight in unhealthy ways. I learned the less I ate, the more I exercised, the more weight I'd lose, which is not a healthy way to go about health. And so I spent the next 16 years just like searching for freedom within this new body that I now had, because I finally made friends after losing weight. And I just attributed lose weight, have friends, lose weight, be a normal person. Then I ended up getting my degree. I studied nutrition all through middle school, all through high school, got my degree in nutrition in college, searching for food freedom, searching for the answers, never found them. Then I became a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, thinking this will finally give me the answers. And I still didn't get my answers, which I just wanted the freedom from food. And so it wasn't until I just surrendered everything, surrendered trying to find the perfect diet, surrendered trying to control my body, that I just started listening to my body and eating fruits and vegetables and like eating what I knew was good for me. And in that moment, I realized that I had attained a body that was previously hard for me to maintain, like a body size, and I wasn't trying at all. I was literally just eating whole foods, focusing on how much I ate, eating when I was hungry, stopping when I was full, having a good relationship with food, and I found out that was the key. And just like anyone, when you're searching like your whole life to find the key, the answer to something, it was like mind-blowing to me, where I was like, oh my God, if I can transform this, what else can I transform in my life? And so then I became obsessed with meditation and personal development and all the things, and started attending retreats. And I didn't have many girlfriends growing up. Then I had my first birth chart reading, and I had been attending so many women's retreats at that point, and had been breaking down my walls around a woman. And I started feeling more comfortable around a woman and actually started making a lot of woman friends. And so I got my first birth chart reading. I had started a business, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't even know if I wanted this business. And so I had just taken a month off where I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't working on my business. I was literally just, I actually went to Mark England's house of Enlifted Coaches. I was at his house when I got my first birth chart reading. So I get on the phone with this woman. She reads my birth chart and she tells me about my South Node, which your South Node in astrology describes your past life. I remember when I read your chart, I told you about your South Node and how you were hyper independent and like leader of people, leader out in the world. And for me, my South Node was I traveled from place to place working for wealthy people. And I set up art schools and institutions, and whatever I told people to do to set up their school or their institution, they would listen to me. And so for some reason, based on what she said, I decided that means that I can host my own retreat, even though I had no clients, no idea how to host a retreat. I was like, I did it in a past life, so why can't I do it now? And I write about the retreat as if I had already hosted it. I was like manifesting it. I wrote a story as if I had already hosted it a year ago. And I read it to every single person I could at my mentor, Mark England's house. I read it to 20 different coaches. And by like the 20th person I read it to, it just felt so real that I was like, I'm hosting this retreat. So I got home from Mark's house. I didn't have a credit card or money. So I asked my mom if I could put the retreat house on her credit card. And she said yes. Thankfully, she trusts me. And I ended up selling out that retreat in 1 month with 14 people. It was amazing. I went on to host 6 more retreats over the next 2 years. And that's when I fell in love with astrology. I was just like, holy crap. I would have never thought I could have hosted a retreat. Who in my right mind was I to host a retreat? You know, like I had never hosted one before. I had no clients. I had, like, what am I doing? And the fact that like astrology gave me a clue into myself that I didn't know about myself. And then it worked out as well as it did. And then I went on to host like 6 in 2 years. I just became astrology obsessed. And so I just started researching things. And then I just started taking leap after leap based on my astrology. Like the leap I did to host my first retreat, like that's a huge leap. And so ever since then, I've used astrology to take huge leaps in my life, but also gain huge awarenesses about myself, like painful realizations, but also realizations that have helped me shed a lot of old trauma and come back into my power. And astrology has also empowered me in so many different ways. Like it's guided me, it's directed me, it's helped me push. I can't say enough things. There's so many stories I could go down, so I'll just leave it there. But it's basically how I got where I am today. A big part of me hosting the retreats over the 2 years was it was a part of me healing the relationship with women, where I had attended retreats, helped me heal my relationship with women. And so my retreats were really based around healing women wounds and just all coming together to support one another in the power of group manifestation. Hosting those 6 retreats was even more evident to me, like the power of woman and the power of retreats. And I always had an astrologer at my retreats before I became an astrologer. So, yeah.
Now, when you went to the weight loss camp, how old were you?
I was 9.
Wow.
So I've started my personal development journey really early.
And your parents were on board for you attending the camp?
Yeah, I begged them to let me go. My mom worried about me because I didn't have many friends. I just kind of was like the silent girl who didn't really interact with people and was obese. So that's like another big part of my story. I'm the girl who barely talked until high school/college. I'm the girl who like didn't have many friends. And now I have friends all over the country. Now I lead groups of women. To me, it goes to show what's possible. I just think there's no excuse at this point for anyone. Like I literally was a mute person for like half of my life. If I was mute because I was so anxious and like I had all the bad thoughts, I'm sure anyone else here listening to this has had, you know what I'm saying? The disempowering thoughts, the thinking you're stuck, the thinking there's something inherently wrong with you because you don't belong in society. I've been there. And I love spreading that message because I know it's possible. I know what's on the other side. You can be a mute person and then grow up to be a person who has friends all over the world, all over the country, and hosting retreats.
Thank you for listening so far. Every Monday, you can start your week with our Monday mindset shift. And every Friday, you'll end your week with For Your Mind Fridays. Stay tuned for more ways to elevate your mindset. You got into health and nutrition post the weight loss camp. And so you went to school for that too, you said.
Yeah.
And now you got into coaching nutrition. And how long did you do that for?
Well, that was the thing is I started my business coaching nutrition, but I was kind of over it at that point. I had studied nutrition for like 16 years. I felt like I learned all I needed to learn. I just didn't really care anymore. I had come to this realization that learning about it doesn't help anyone at all. And that it's really literally just about being in your present and learning your body and learning yourself. And I tried spreading that message, but to be honest, I wasn't super passionate about it. I just think it's like with anything that you exhaust, when you exhaust a passion, that's why I took that month off from trying to start that business. And I just wasn't passionate enough about it to get it off the ground. Hence why I took the month off, hence got the birth chart reading. And then I went on to host retreats. And nutrition did become a part of my retreats. My chef, who's been at every retreat, is my best friend. She's partners of Enlifted, Kim Kesting. She's the podcast host of Enlifted. Me and her were in the same Enlifted group together in 2020. And we were both in level 1 together. And now she's risen to be the face of Enlifted, basically. But that's how we initially became friends. And she's really into intuitive eating like I am. And so a big part of my retreats is that nourishing factor is I always get organic whole foods. And we talk about eating intuitively and listening to your body. And we make it a very intentional part of the retreat.
Okay. So you never had clients like nutrition-wise, health-wise?
I didn't build my business enough to like real thing. And that was another part of this whole story is I realized the power of following your passion in your heart. Like you can move mountains by following your passion in your heart. You can just shock the crap out of yourself. Like if I didn't follow my passion in my heart, I would have never hosted that retreat. When really, if you look at everything on paper, I had no business hosting a retreat. You know, I had no funding, no people, but then it ended up happening, you know? It's the same thing with astrology. People are shocked at how much I know in astrology, but literally it was just because I followed my heart. And I just believe heart power is stronger than mind power. And that's a big thing of what I do at my retreats too, is we get really into the heart and we manifest and we tap into your truest passions. And I've learned that passion is the strongest force in the universe to get everything you want.
You said heart power is stronger than mind power.
1,000 million times stronger. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have the scientific evidence, but actually there have been scientific studies that the heart frequency is like 5,000 times the mind or something, or like there's some sort of evidence I have seen.
Good. I've never heard that phrase. I like that. Okay. So how soon after your birth chart reading did you start delving really deep into astrology?
Immediately. Well, the second that I filled my whole retreat in like a month, like literally it was January 30th, 2021. I had the reading. I got home around like the first week of February from Virginia, from Mark's house. And I asked my mom to put it on the credit card that week. And then literally throughout February, I sold it out, had the whole thing planned.
You host the retreat
in April. So it was in February, had the reading. Yeah, had the reading, that started selling it out, hosted it in April. And then between that time of selling it out in April, I started really studying it. I kind of just studied the basics for the first 2 or 3 years of me studying. It was just like the signs, planets, you know, the basic parts of astrology. And I thought that I wasn't going to get past there. And that's why I always hired an astrologer to be on my retreats. And then my heart power took over and I became an obsessive person who would do it from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. And then I learned the language of astrology very quickly.
Wow. You do it that often?
Ryan calls me a berserker. You know how everyone has their talents? My talent is my brain. I have an amazing memory. Like I remember your chart. I just have a really good memory. Everyone has their gifts. My gift is my memory and my brain. So, and my obsessive, I'm an obsessive person. So yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
I know your chart.
I feel like we would have a similar chart. Do we?
We don't, but there's some things in your chart that I was like, yeah, she gets it. She gets the obsessive, like your moon and house. Yeah, obsessive always, and then thinking about how I can do better, and then filling in the gaps, and then wanting to know that detail, and like I can go really narrow into the details, probably like you can too.
Yeah. Yep. What would you say was the most surprising thing you learned when you discovered astrology?
You know, when I first started getting into astrology, I actually think I used it in more of a toxic way. Like even before I got my first reading, I used it to like hope and pray things would happen in my life. So I would look at a horoscope. Someone would tell me, you're about to be abundant this year. And then I would just be like, can't wait for the abundance. And I wouldn't do anything about it. Or I'd get really into reading horoscope apps and then start obsessing over my relationship with someone and why it might not work out based on what the horoscope app is telling me. You know what I'm saying? Or I would just start to like go into all of these rabbit holes where I wouldn't feel very good. It's like I would study astrology in an obsessive way in order to control my external reality or have some sort of hope. And I wouldn't feel good. I don't know if you can relate with this at all or if anyone listening to this can, but I'm trying to think, like, I would look at an astrology app and look at all the reasons why, like, see, this is why he's probably going to leave me in the future, talking about Ryan. Like, this is why my boyfriend's going to leave me because he's going to need this eventually and I won't take that. And I would just I would like use it in that disempowering way. And so what I actually learned about astrology is it's not a hope and pray tactic. It's not a you're doomed to your chart tactic. It is literally just guidance and a tool, and you have the power. Like, we have our own will. We have the ability to get to the highest expression of our chart or to get trapped by the lowest expression. And to me, one of the most liberating, cool things about astrology is when you actually use it as a guidepost to make big leaps in your life or as a reason to ask yourself, why couldn't I do that? Like, I could totally do that. My chart says like in the highest expression, I could do that. Why couldn't I do it? And so I'd say it's like using it as a tool to believe in things about yourself that if you didn't have someone else telling you it was possible, you know, if you didn't have that like story, you might not take that leap, you know? And also realizing that you are not trapped by your chart. There's always a low vibe and a high vibe. And I want to always lean into the high vibe expression. So that was kind of a thing that snuck up on me in learning astrology it might have been through my Enlifted method because I'm constantly Enlifted methoding in my head. So I don't know if that helped me see astrology in a different light, but I mean, man, that just changed my life. Also just learning about how the different planets affect your body, like learning that your sun sign is your life force energy. And if you're ever feeling really tired, it's probably because you're not acting in a core sun sign. And so you just get to do more things like your sun sign. Like I was telling you, I was really freaking tired today. I've literally been eating food, being lazy, prepping for some readings, but in a really lazy way. And then I was like, okay, well, what can I do that will give me energy? And I thought of my sun sign, and I have Taurus in the 8th house, which makes so much sense why I love astrology, because that's very much Taurus in the 8th house. 8th house is like occult, like witchy stuff. So I go online and I go live to talk about astrology, and then I get all of my energy back. So it's like using astrology in that way too, understanding the different aspects of my chart and what I need to do to gain energy. Like another thing I did to gain energy today before I went live was I went on a walk in nature because I'm a Taurus. If I go in, nature gives me energy. For you, Amanda, you're a Virgo. If you ground in the earth will give you more energy. The more grounded you get, more energy. Virgo's the more anxious earth sign. And so Virgo, like having a clean space can give you energy. Organizing your stuff can give you energy. Grounding in the earth can give you energy. Writing can give you energy. communicating can give you energy.
No, you mentioned horoscopes, and I feel like they are very popular nowadays and have been for a while. What suggestions do you have for people listening if they read their horoscope and they find it disempowering?
To look for another horoscope app or to actually research. I like YouTube University, and I like to get a well-rounded version of all of my horoscopes. Some people will give you disempowering horoscopes, but that's the thing. You walk down a street and you're going to have one person yelling at the guy for going too fast down the road and saying he's an a-hole, and another person blissfully walking by being like, wow, look how beautiful that car is. Everyone sees things from different perspectives. So it's just like talking to a negative Nancy versus a positive Polly. Do you want to just stop and talk to the negative Nancy and get their viewpoint? We would never just take advice from Nancy. You want that?
I just love how you said that, because one of the things I have emphasized to a lot of people is I started a mindset podcast because I'm getting rid of the negative Nancy.
I love that this fits with your podcast.
That's really true, though. You'll have some that are disempowering, some that aren't. Just like people.
Okay. And you create your own reality. So seek the empowering one. That's the thing with astrology that I like to hammer into people is Jesus, you create your own reality. When I give readings and I tell people different aspects of their chart and the things that they need to work on, my purpose is to be this is what you get to do in this lifetime. This is what's going to help you feel even more empowered. And this is why they are where they are. Or I could be hey, this is what you need to embody more of in your lifetime. If we create our own reality, might as well focus on what we can do to make it the best reality that there is,
Yeah. I like what you said there about how there's a disempowering way to say anything. I think that's really true. Your tone, the words, words are everything. And the ones you use, affect it,
1,000%. That's why I'm very grateful for Enlifted, actually. I do think Enlifted was very helpful in my ability to shift my perspective on astrology and give the astrology info to people.
How did you first discover Enlifted?
Well, so me and Ryan were working in the cannabis industry. That's how I met him. We were working at the same dispensary together, and we were working in the grow one day, and we were both listening to a podcast with Mark on it. It was the Positive Head podcast. Afterwards, we came together and we're like, wow, that guy's awesome. We'd love to meet him one day. Fast forward a year, we're leaving cannabis, or we don't want to work there anymore. Ryan makes a post about the power of your words on Facebook and tags Mark England. And Mark sees the post and is like, buddy, let's get on a phone call. And Ryan's like, oh my God, this guy wants to get on a phone call with me. And so Ryan gets on a phone call with him and he's like, come do my level 1. It's his second group he was running of his Enlifted course. Ryan does the program and it was life-changing and I'm a personal development junkie seeker. So at the time I was like, shit, I'll take it. This is my first time investing in myself. And it was life-changing and so worth it. And I met so many of my best friends that I'm friends with till today. So yeah, synchronicity like that is how we met.
Wow. And when did you get certified?
July 2020. Wow. Yeah.
And did you and Ryan get certified together too?
I got certified with Kim Kesting, though, who I think Kim's been on your podcast.
And now, how long after getting certified and Enlifted did you have the birth chart reading at Mark's house? Approximately.
Well, that was I had the reading on not the reading. Sorry, I was on did the Enlifted certification in July, and then I did level 2, I think, through October, and then we just started going to Mark's house a lot. We went to Mark's house 2 or 3 times between me getting certified in July and that when I got my reading at his house in January. So it was probably 6-7 months later. The really cool thing about Enlifted, and I use Enlifted in my coaching and all these different things because it's so life-changing for me. The really cool thing about Enlifted is it's really taught me to almost like train my subconscious for projections and like getting triggered. And so it's been like a godsend for me because I'll get triggered in a relationship. I'll act out the trigger and I'll be kind of a dick and we'll get into a fight. Then I'll always ask myself, how was I triggered? Because I know that no one's right and no one's wrong. I don't know if Enlifted taught me that or if this is just my brain has come up with from implementing the method so much, because they don't talk about this in Enlifted. But I've just realized that no one's right and no one's wrong. Any argument or disagreement or anything I get triggered by is literally just my own responsibility. And so even recently when we were in El Salvador, me and Kim got into a fight. She's my best friend, so we can get into fights. And she said something that triggered me, and I like fought. We were like fighting at a restaurant, and it was kind of embarrassing fighting. And so then I like go home to our Airbnb, and I lock myself in the room. And I just cried. I'm just like, I hate everyone. I hate everyone. I'm just like going at it. And then I like, after crying for a while, I was like, okay, Rachel, like, how can you take responsibility? And I was like, well, you did get triggered when she said this certain phrase. So even no one's right and no one's wrong, but you did get triggered and then you acted in that way. So then I realized I got triggered and acted in an unfavorable way. And then I felt like 10 pounds lighter after. And then I went out, I apologized to her. We were all good. She recognized that she was also triggered, that we were both fighting to be right and no one's right and no one's wrong. And so, yeah, Enlifted's been super powerful for me in that way of just being able to like swallow my pride. But then when you swallow your pride, you actually end up with more power. Does that make sense?
How do you end up with more power by swallowing your pride?
Because when you swallow your pride and you accept that you're always an equal part to your trigger, right? Like even if they triggered you, you're triggered. There's always equal parts. It comes from my past trauma. I wouldn't get triggered unless I picked this up from my past. For example, I have a fear of coming off too cocky and like a narcissist. Right? Kim said that I was talking to Kim. The fight was about, I wanted to get off social media. I don't want to be on Instagram anymore. And then she said that people who didn't want to be on Instagram are probably narcissists. And so I was like, oh, is she calling me a narcissist? And then I got triggered because obviously that's a deep down fear of mine of not wanting to be a narcissist, you know? And then when I was crying, and then I realized it was because I got triggered because I thought she was calling me a narcissist, but really she's not calling me a narcissist. I got triggered and took it personally. And then I could cry that out. I wouldn't be able to feel empowered unless I cried it out. I almost find that the crying is necessary. Like, you know, when you have a good cry and then you just have nothing left to give at the end, like you're just empty. That's kind of my process, is getting myself to just empty all of my tears out. When you get to that other side, it's this deep acceptance of like, I'm not a narcissist. She's not a narcissist. I was just getting triggered. I don't even care anymore. Like I literally cried. I have nothing left to care. So I'm going to go apologize to her now because I got triggered. To me, that's like so powerful. Like that makes me feel like the most powerful, baddest bitch ever. Because how many, you know what I'm saying? Like how many people do that? And I love myself for that, because if you don't do that, you're continually giving your power away. I actually talked about this for the Scorpio full moon video I did tonight. How Scorpio tries to control and go into power struggles. Like that's what we do when we get triggered. We need to be right. And so we go into a power struggle and we fight. But if you can cry it out and realize it doesn't freaking matter if you're right, it really doesn't. Your true power comes from owning who you are, regardless of if you're right or not. Your true power comes when you don't actually have to care about how people see you, or you don't have to care about being right or proving yourself in some way. Like to me, gosh, that's the most freeing, powerful thing you could possibly have, because I no longer have to control how people see me. I no longer have to control what people think, and I no longer have to be right. So to me, that's how it creates power.
Was it mainly Enlifted?
If I'm honest, I think it started with the surrendering after I went on that 16-year kick of researching nutrition. That was my first instance of realizing my power, was when I just surrender and let things be. I have power and my body works better. and I can maintain that weight. And then I've just realized that ever since is when I surrender and let go of control and don't need to be seen in a certain light or don't need to control life in order to get a certain outcome. And I just sit in my sovereignty and my worth and who I am. Things work out a million times better. And it's like every time you do, that's power. It's like in a complete surrender to life. Like that's real magic. Like we all want to create magic in life. And that's where I think astrology has done for me. To me, I think astrology gives you power. Because if you trust in the power of the story, if you trust in the magic of the star, and you can surrender everything else, but just trust that like, oh, my chart told me I could be a great retreat host, so I'm going to go host a retreat, even though I have no evidence to back this up. Like that gives you power. You know what I'm saying? It's like whenever you can have blind faith in the universe and in yourself and not need to control your external environment, power. You have more power.
Okay.
It's like the potency of your energy. You know what I'm saying? Like think about investments. Because I'm thinking about like the 8th house in astrology. The 8th house in astrology rules power, which you have your moon in the 8th house. I have my sun and my Mercury in the 8th house, which is why we're obsessive. But like the 8th house rules power, but the 8th house also rules big chunky money. Why does it rule big chunky money? Because think about investments. Like investments are power. You put $1,000 into something, and if you understand how the markets work, if you understand how markets move, like you don't really have to do anything else, but then you can leverage that $1,000 and turn it into $1 million. Like people who invested in Bitcoin back then, because they trusted the universe, they trusted the research, they leveraged less money to make more money. Whereas if you have the opposite mindset, right? Like you don't believe you have power and you believe you just have to control life, then you work really hard to get there. And you almost try to control and expend more energy. Just the same thing as my diet story I told. I spent 16 years researching everything possible, trying every single diet. And the key was to just listen to my body. So I've just learned that the more you cut out all the BS, all the noise, all the control, all the overextending, and you just learn to leverage your energy and accept like the real raw truth of the universe. And I actually also realized the more you try to control, like control comes out of fear, right? Control's coming out of fear of not having. And so if I'm going to try to control a boyfriend, for example, control my food, like control whatever, I actually end up manifesting the very thing I don't want. This is another power move I've transformed through. I used to try to control Ryan. If Ryan was a good boyfriend, he would say hi to me at parties. If Ryan was my perfect boyfriend, then if he wanted to go do that thing over there, obviously he would ask me and give me a phone call. But with me, if Ryan didn't ask me before he went to do something, or Ryan didn't come to me to talk to a party, I would try to control him and tell him he was being a bad boyfriend and he needs to consult me first. But why am I doing that? I'm controlling him out of fear of him abandoning me, out of me not being good enough, out of me not being worth being asked to go somewhere, or being worth talking to me at a party, you know? And what I realized was the only reason anyone would want to actually abandon me is because I would control them. Why would anyone want to leave you? Is because they can't be them, because you're controlling them. And so I've realized the very thing you fear that you then go out and try to control will end up manifesting into your life. And so why not just surrender? It's more complicated than that. Like, I think it requires facing some really hard truth in order to surrender. Like that example I just gave in my relationship with Ryan, I was able to surrender that after having a really painful conversation where he told me I was limiting his freedom. And like, it felt like he could actually abandon me at that point, because it was like, oh my God, like he doesn't feel like he can be him, and he doesn't think he can last in a relationship where he can't be him. I'm manifesting the very thing I don't want. So I'm just going to give him his freedom and realize that when we're out at a party and he doesn't talk to me, it doesn't mean that he doesn't love me. It doesn't mean that I'm not important. It just means that he's being him and I get to be me. And that was one of the most empowering things that's happened in my life too. So that's just like another example of, does this make sense? Like the more you try to control out of your fear and then manifest the very thing you don't want.
Wow. And it's interesting to me that you had 2 real life examples that you were able to come up with very quickly. They're just very relatable, both of them to me. It makes so much sense, but they're both very relatable. Sometimes people give an example and I'm like, oh, okay. But I relate to both of them completely. I'm like, oh, yeah, same.
I have the 8th house too. It's on control.
Relate to it so well. The fucking 8th house.
But it's also where your power is. Like the moment you let go of the control and you realize that you don't need to control is when you actually get your power. Like how powerful is it to not have to control, but to just be able to own your power?
I would love to touch upon the retreats that you used to host. How was your first one?
It was amazing. I cried. I've cried at almost every retreat I've hosted. I cry out of happiness. Like I would just be so grateful for everyone there. At my first retreat, I was really vulnerable because I was like, this is so amazing. I've never had a lot of girlfriends and now all of you are here and I'm hosting a retreat with you all. And I'm just like, and I was like, just crying out of gratitude. It's want to know, along the lines of control and retreats. Out of all the retreats I hosted, I said I hosted 6 in 2 years. One crazy thing I realized about hosting retreats was the more I planned for a retreat, the more I gave everything I got to it, the worse it went, and the less I planned. And the more I was just in flow with it and literally just focused on having fun. And I barely thought about the retreat until the retreat actually came and I was there. Those were my best retreats. And so I've just like, that's another lesson I've learned, even through hosting retreats, that I realized like the more loose you are with your plans, because that's the thing about retreats is you have to be loose with planning retreats because you'll have a whole plan and anything can happen. You know what I'm saying? Like group dynamics, like mistakes, time being weird. We've had some weird time warps. I feel like over the last few years where time's speeding up and then slowing down and then speeding up and being really weird. But yeah, that is how my retreats went. It's so funny because like my Hawaii retreat, I host a retreat in Hawaii. I always host a retreat in a place I always want to go to. That's like been my theme because I believe you create your own life. So why would I not host a retreat in a place I want to go to? I get a free vacation there. So I hosted one retreat in Hawaii. That was my least favorite retreat because that was the one I planned the most for. I planned for a whole year for that. Can I swear on here? Yeah. Okay, I planned for a whole year for that bitch. Like, I literally, like, I talked to all these people I knew in Hawaii. I was, like, thinking about it constantly. I was just, like, constantly on my shit. And that retreat had, like, ripped me a new one. It went well for the people, but for me personally, it ripped me a new one. And then after that, and this is kind of goes with the whole theme, too, of where I realized, like, you just have to experience really uncomfortable shit to get to a point of surrender. After that retreat, I was like, F planning, over planning these retreats. I was like, I know what to do. I was like, I can't even care. I was like, we're going to go here. We're going to have fun. And it's going to work out. And then literally that's when I learned the lesson because I didn't plan at all. And that retreat was my best retreat yet. And so, yeah, that's how my other retreats went.
Wow. So why was the Hawaii retreat so bad?
Oh, it was just bad for me because I had so many hiccups. Like one time we were going on this hike to go to the best snorkeling in Hawaii. And I checked with like 3 people who were from the island. Everyone's like, it's a safe hike. Ended up being one of the steepest hikes of my life. It's like 1,500 feet up in like 45 minutes. And
oh my gosh,
people were dying. And when we get down to the watering hole where the fishies all are, like to go snorkeling, my photographer slips and slices her foot open. So she can't go back up this hill. And so I'm having to like be like, I don't know what to do about this woman. And I see a boat out in the middle of the ocean. So I swim out to the middle of the ocean, ask this boat if they can take my photographer. They take my photographer. It's a whole traumatic thing for her because then they can't like bring the boat to shore to drop her off anywhere. So by the time I go pick her up, this woman's like traumatized. I like am walking up the hill with the girls to like go back up the hike to eventually get this girl. My other facilitators are ahead of me. I assume that they're going to immediately go and get the girl because that was the only thing on my mind. No, apparently we have a miscommunication. They go and get ice cream. And I get to the top of the hill, like, what the heck? You didn't go get the girl? That was just one of the many crazy scenarios that happened while hosting this retreat. I don't know, had a great time, but for me, I mean, that girl who was traumatized, maybe she didn't have to tell you. It was a lot.
It sounds like it. And that's just one example of that retreat.
Like my only retreat I've had that we ended up going when Mauna Loa, the biggest volcano that only erupts like every 40 to 80 years, is erupting the week we went. So it was just, the energy was really intense. We lost power for hours, and all the food I bought, like I spent thousands of dollars on food from my chef, almost went bad. It was just constant thing after thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
But you started flowing, and so it seems like it worked.
It works very well. It's actually the only way I live life now, to be honest. I used to be a control freak most of my life. I was actually just talking about this with Ryan, how I became so masculine, so like perfection, like obsessive person, but like also like outwardly obsessive, like controlling everything. And I realized over time how much it's blocked me in life and how much surrender is needed in life, and like trusting the universe and trusting your intuition. I used to say I was the least intuitive person in the world. Now I think I'm the most intuitive person in the world. And I truly believe that only comes from like taking the big leaps, you know, surrendering after going through really painful experiences and just being like, F it, let's just see what happens. Throwing it up to God, you know?
I'm curious how you approach people who either don't believe in astrology or are skeptical of it.
I don't care if people believe in it or not, because I know the result it's helped me create in my life. I don't even know if astrology is real. I believe it's real. I use it as a tool for wonder and magic in my life. It's a tool. Everything's a tool. My number one belief is that we create our own reality. And so if I create my own reality, and to me, astrology makes everything in life look magical and fun and helps me make meaning out of everything. And it's helped me access my intuition. Like, whether astrology is real or not, like, it's helped me be right a lot of the time. And so, like, it either made me more intuitive, or it's real, or it just my magic of belief. But to me, like, I don't care if people believe in it or not, because of all the things I just described. Like, I wouldn't have hosted all of those retreats. I wouldn't be able to understand my boyfriend and like understand his wants and needs. I wouldn't be able to understand my clients' wants and needs. It's helped me build stronger connections with people. Like, Ryan is a Virgo moon, Virgo rising. And so one thing I know about Virgo is you guys like to be of service to people. He loves if he can help me on things. And I'm a person who doesn't want anyone close to me to help me. And so learning about him, that he needs to help people, it actually is emotionally fulfilling for him because his moon's in Virgo. I just decided to start asking him for help on the little things that I wouldn't care if he helped me with. The first time I asked him to help me because I knew that it would be nourishing for him to help me, he jumped like a kid and said, "Oh my God, you've never asked me anything." He's like, "I'm so excited." He's like, "Yes, let's go do this." And like, he literally was like a kid on Christmas. To me, I don't care if astrology is real or not, because if it helps me connect with people in that way, if it's helped me have major breakthroughs with my clients, if it helps them realize things about themselves and me realize things about me, why does it matter if it's real if it changes your life? That's real.
Why does it matter if it changes your life?
You know, like, I feel like in today's day and age, we're so obsessed with like science, but like science is the new religion. This is one of the things that always tripped me up in nutrition, which is one of the reasons I kind of got to the surrender around nutrition point. You know, I was in college. I had to do research after research on nutrition. I've done extensive scientific research. I've written my own research papers in college. I was obsessed with it. It was my previous obsession. And the thing about research in science is that there is a million different studies to support a million different things. Like, you could support anything you wanted out there, basically. And so in a sense, science is a religion, just like astrology is a religion. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's no different. Like, we like to think that we've figured out all the truths to the universe because we have science, but even science is constantly evolving and changing. Like, that's the point of science, right? So to me, astrology is actually the longest science we've had. It's been here way before science.
Really? When was astrology?
I don't know the exact date, but we've used it. They have it dated back till BC time. It goes back thousands of years. It's one of the oldest standing divination tools in sciences.
Wow. Okay. How is human design different from astrology?
Human design is newer, actually. So the guy Ra, who channeled human design, he channeled it in the 1970s. It combines more than just astrology. It combines the I Ching. It combines the Kabbalah. It combines the Tree of Life. I do like human design, but I feel like the way it's talked about online can put people in kind of a box. Like, one of the things I really like about astrology is I'll tell people it just feels like there's more room to move around in and grow. There are more archetypes, like energies to embody, less rules. So I don't know if you're into human design, but you'll see people be like, I'm a projector, and that's why I only work 4 hours a day. It's like a rule for a projector or something. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's where it can get kind of toxic, is when people fall into the boxes. That's why I really believe in like archetypes. I think that's one of the things I like most about astrology is how it's 12 archetypes. Each sign is just an archetype, you know? Just like people embody archetypes, you hear people embodying like goddesses and stuff. Like, I'm going to embody Lakshmi, or I'm going to, you know what I'm saying? People working with Tantra goddesses. I don't know if you're into Tantra, but
I know of it. I gotcha. No, I was just curious because you hear so much about, I hear a lot about both. I'm not like super into the human design, but
yeah, I used to read human design charts. I used to be really into it. I just fell more in love with astrology.
Oh, you used to read human design charts.
Yeah, that was my first obsession, and I learned it very quickly. And then I was just like, I want more. And then I went into astrology, and then I was like, oh my God, astrology is it. Because you could like learn lifetimes in astrology. I won't be able to, in my lifetime, I will not be able to learn everything that I want to learn about astrology. But you know, a lot of billionaires use astrology. Have you ever heard the quote, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do?
I haven't.
So JP Morgan has an astrologer. There's actually this psychic book I read about the Titanic, and JP Morgan was supposed to go on the Titanic and didn't go on the Titanic because his astrologer told him not to, because there was a square between Saturn and some other planet. And the astrologer's like, this doesn't look good. Kings, queens, like royalty have used astrology throughout history. They've predicted deaths of kings and queens using astrology.
I got chills when you mentioned that Titanic reference.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Then. Well, thank you so much. So, have you heard of a man named Jay Shetty?
Yeah, I have. Mm-hmm.
So, he has a podcast called On Purpose, and he ends his podcast with 2 segments, and I've started incorporating my podcast with them as well. The first one is the many sides to us. And there's 5 questions, and they need to be answered in 1 word each. Okay? Number 1. What is 1 word someone who is meeting you for the first time would use to describe you?
Bubbly.
What is 1 word that someone who knows you extremely well would use to describe you?
A berserker.
Number 3. What is 1 word you'd use to describe yourself?
Powerful.
Number 4. What is 1 word that if someone didn't like you or agree with your mindset would use to describe you?
Stubborn.
Number 5. What is 1 word that you're embodying right now?
Surrender.
Then the second segment is the final 5, and these can be answered in a sentence. What is the best advice you've heard or received?
Oh, I'm between 2 pieces of advice, so I'm trying to think which one. I take my time. That was a really big life-changing realization, is that you can take your time, and actually that when you take your time, everything you do is so much more potent. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Number 2, what is the worst advice you've heard or received?
Honestly, anytime I get advice where people tell me that this is the way things have to be, that's the worst advice, because I don't believe that there's one way to do anything. And I actually believe that that's a surefire way to get stuck and actually lose yourself and get out of your authenticity and out of your alignment.
Number 3, what is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
Having all the facts. She helped people surrender to life, surrender to their truth, and create a life that's really in alignment with them and not a life based on their family standards, society standards. I help people create more freedom within themselves and actually trust their heart, which to me is like, makes me want to explode when I think of just like anyone connecting to their heart and following that and realizing you can really trust that. That's the best life ever, to realize you can trust your heart. You told me you're going to that retreat. That's why I was so excited for you. I was like, oh my God, like what's going to happen for her? Like she's going to realize the power of doing the fun things and doing that. To me, that's like everything.
If you could create one law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be? And I want to know why.
That people really sit into and feel in a well-rounded 360 way, like all your senses involved way of what they truly want and what would truly feel good for them in the moment, instead of just resorting to like their quick pleasures. I know what it takes to change your life. I know what it takes to get to a place of freedom and like travel and like have all the friends and the fun and the joy and that complete sense of ease and all the things that you want. Like actually, I almost want to change my answer from before, because it's actually clothes I used to value, and I don't value buying clothes anymore. I value experiences and shifting my life and living my best life. And so the reason I say what I just said is because I truly believe if people really sat in how they were going to feel after they did something, instead of just going for the quick pleasure of like, I'm going to go out to eat and get a bunch of drinks and food with my friends because I'll have fun for 2 hours, versus they could have used that money to go on a life-changing retreat or use that money to like go to the farmer's market. Because if you really sit into how you want to feel, like if you sit into it, you would realize I'd feel really good eating this whole buffet from the farmer's market and cooking it myself versus being out to eat for 2 hours, spending $300 and having a few drinks and then just wanting to go to bed when I get home. Like I really want people to sit in the different experiences and be able to make that a rule of like, you think you want this, but if you were to sit in the totality of this experience and feel it through to the end and imagine it to the end, versus feeling through the totality of this other experience that appears to be a little bit more work potentially, or a little bit more risky, or a little bit more long-term, like attending a retreat, or for example, like which one do you imagine would feel better at the end? I imagine it's this other one where you collected all the food from the farmer's market and made a simple meal with your friends, or saved the money from going out to eat and went to a retreat and gained that experience. That's one of the ways in which I switched out of dieting mindset to having food freedom, was that switch of really like sitting into how would it feel to eat this bland diet food versus how would it feel if I made myself like a homemade guac and this yummy salmon. And the guac and salmon would outshine this lean cuisine any night of the day or any day of the year, because this Whole Foods meal that I made not only tastes good, but I have energy after it and I feel full and I feel vibrant and there's a sense of pride. When I eat this lean cuisine, I feel kind of hungry still. Like it tasted okay. At least it's low calories. I should be getting thin, right? Like it's a completely different vibe. And I just like wish that it was a rule that people would truly sit in the vibe and feel it all the way through before they made their decisions.
I've been asking these questions for a while, and I've never gotten a response like that, but I really like that. It's just sit in it, to feel it.
I believe that we're like on the verge of a psychic revolution, and I believe everyone is psychic. And the more they practice that, you actually realize like you can feel into what would truly liberate you, and it helps you make decisions that are more in touch with what your soul really wants.
Okay. Wow. Can you share with us the resources that you utilize consistently to be successful?
Honestly, it's mainly YouTube videos because I'm obsessed with YouTube. So I'm trying to think of like resources. I mainly look at birth charts constantly, like really from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. Before I knew astrology, I would go on YouTube and I would listen to a bunch of astrologers and get my monthly horoscope. It's actually how I healed my money mindset and like actually started building wealth and like shifting how I looked at wealth and money for my first time was listening to an astrology horoscope. She said to keep an eye out for shocking, surprising, out of the box, out of the normal things that come into your reality. And this financial course popped up and I was like, well, that's shocking and out of the box. I'll lean into it. And then literally I shifted my whole relationship with money. So for me, it's like using astrology as a way to open up your sights and take chances on things that you might not normally try. That's one tool that I use constantly. Or get a birth chart reading with me or someone. I meditate. I think meditating is the most important tool in the world, and I don't even think it should be negotiable. That should be another law. I literally think meditating is the most important tool in the whole universe, and I say this as someone who used to hate meditating, who thought I was allergic to meditating, because every time I would meditate, I'd get itchy, and I thought I was just allergic to it. Turns out I just had to practice over the course of several years. But meditating will change your life. It's the only way you can shift patterns. The reason I see people get so stuck and not grow when they do so much self-development is because you just haven't created enough space between your thoughts by practicing meditating every day. Like minimum 20 minutes. I think 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like you can start with that, but it's really BS. Like 20 minutes minimum to true, like even if you split into 10 and 10 and start there, I mean, I'm really up to an hour a day. I think that should be the set standard. So yeah, I will say meditating, a huge tool. And I like the Enlifted method, the projections and taking that self-responsibility, like a lot of the concepts that I talked about in here. So if no one knows what I mean by taking projections and taking that responsibility, watch the Get Enlifted podcast. They talk about it.
Sounds well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you speaking with me. And before we close out, is there anything else you want to share with the listeners?
That's it. I guess the last thing I want to share is that if you're listening to this and you've listened to a lot of personal development podcasts, I'm assuming you're a person who desperately wants to change and shift and maybe even trying your whole life. And you just think it's not possible because you're like, I've been trying my whole life. I won't be able to ever get there. Listen, I know for a fact, 100% certainty you can get there. Get around the right people. I actually think who you're around is monumental in your shifts. A lot of my big shifts came after getting in the room with people who were at the next level to me, but I guess hadn't evolved past where I was, and spending more time with them. And then you quickly raise up to them. So I just think getting around the right people is everything. And if you feel stuck, it's not your fault. It's just that you're not in the right environment. If you want to explore your birth chart and get a reading with me, you can check me out at Rachel_Varitimos on Instagram, and you can book a reading there. And then I also do astrology coaching, which is basically all the things I've talked about, like using astrology to gain self-awareness, but also using it as a way to make huge leaps in your life and make them work out and blow your own mind.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you speaking with me. And if you guys are interested in getting your birth chart read, I had mine read and I absolutely loved it. And it reminded me and reiterated things I kind of thought I knew. And things I didn't, it absolutely told me. It was so on point. I was amazed, completely amazed. Even the few things I kind of was like, I kind of know this about myself, completely confirmed. And even in the stuff I didn't, it was right on the money. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It was so great chatting with you. And it was so fun reading your chart and this conversation and what you're doing. Like, you're doing a service to the world. It's perfect for the age of Aquarius that we're in now. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Hello, beautiful souls. Mando's here, and I hope you enjoyed this episode with Rachel and I. I wanted to share some of what came up for me in my birth chart reading. Now, this was the first time I've ever done a birth chart reading, and I honestly highly encourage you guys to do a birth chart reading with Rachel. If you have any skepticisms about what you might uncover, what might come up, anything you might learn about yourself, I highly encourage you to lean into the curiosity, lean into the fun, embrace what could be. Anyways, I wanted to share some of what came up because it was really fascinating to me. The first thing my chart revealed to me was about embracing balance in my relationships. And in particular, learning to trust and let others into my heart. The second thing that came up in my birth chart reading with Rachel was about healing past wounds. There is a strong emphasis on past wounds related to fairness, especially in regards to authority figures and women. Now, when Rachel and I delved into this topic, it was really fascinating to me because I have a pretty significant wound around something that honestly was not even consciously in the forefront of my mind. So I wasn't even thinking about it. It's not something I've talked about. It's not something many people know. But Rachel had asked me if there was any incident with women, whether it was my mom or girlfriends, where something unfair happened around the age of 13. At first, I couldn't think of anything. As I started to sit there and really reflect, it came to me how I went to a Catholic school, and when I was in 8th grade, very small school, very small class. There were only 12 kids total, and I was one of 4 girls in the 8th grade class. Now, stuff happened, and there was one of the females in the 8th grade class felt excluded from me and the 2 other females. We had hung out over the weekend, did not invite this one other female. Anyways, no big thing, so I thought. Fast forward ahead, me and the 2 girls who hung out got called down to the principal's office, where we were then spoken to by the principal and by this other girl's mother for at least 20 minutes. And they basically reprimanded us for, quote unquote, bullying this girl and excluding her and all this different stuff. Now, this, what seemed like a small thing in the moment, ended up blowing up. My mom and the other girl's parents were very upset that the principal and this other girl's mom were basically reprimanding us at a pretty young age. We were only 12, and none of our parents even knew that this was taking place. We did not get in any serious trouble within the school. We didn't get suspended. Nothing like that transpired from this. Separated the small 12-kid classroom, and it was a pretty big divide. Some of the boys agreed with the 3 of us, and some of the boys agreed with the other girl. And it even got to the point where Different kids hung out with different kids at recess. The desks were separated in the classroom. It became a whole thing. And now this is an ongoing journey, but it is essential for my personal evolution. And I didn't even know it was something, it was a wounding that I was still experiencing and facing internally. Now, learning to release old rigid rules and open up to new ways of connecting with others is a really great way that Rachel and I uncovered through reading my chart to help me heal this woman wound that I have. The next thing that came up in my chart reading is the power of relationships for me. My chart revealed that my one-on-one relationships are crucial for my personal growth, whether that's one-on-one relationships, platonic, romantic, professional, it doesn't matter. The one-on-one relationships in my life truly help me strategize and plan and improve my life by helping push me to grow. Collaboration is something that really helps my growth. Then we delved into career and joy and aligning the two together. With my Saturn return approaching, my chart is urging me to align my career with what truly brings me joy. This year, I am focusing on letting go of anything that doesn't make me happy and exploring any new possibility that allows me to break free from the mundane, break free from the everyday routine. That was a theme that also came up in my reading about breaking free from the everyday routine. The next thing that came up for me in my birth chart reading was about trusting my intuition and taking risks. Following my heart when I know I am called to do so, even if it feels risky. My chart suggests taking bold but calculated risks can really open up new paths for me personally and financially. Then one of the other things that came up for me was about my evolution in my personal and in my professional life. This reading encouraged me to shift my values towards experiences and towards having more fun and moving away from a less strict and rigid mindset and focus on my professional life. And this evolution is about embracing new opportunities and experiences and expanding myself in ways that resonate with the person I am becoming. And it was really, really fascinating that came up for me because it was right around this time that I did the reading with Rachel that I found out about the opportunity to go to Bali. And now these are just some of the insights and the themes and some of the things that came up when Rachel and I did a deep dive into my birth chart reading. She offers 2 different types of birth chart readings. I did a deep dive 75-minute birth chart reading with her. She also offers a quicker, shorter 30-minute reading. If you have a specific area of life you are looking for some type of clarity on, she can do a 30-minute reading towards a specific area and help you gain more clarity on what the stars and your chart are saying is aligned for you and is in your highest and best interest. I hope you guys learned more about astrology and more about embracing your fun and embracing what it is you want in your life. Thank you so much to Rachel for taking the time to speak with me, not only once on the podcast, but twice because we ran into issues. I super appreciate her time, her energy, and everything she embodies. If you want to learn more about astrology, maybe you're not ready for a reading yet, I highly encourage you to check out Rachel's podcast, Astrology Magic. You can listen to it on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to a podcast, and start to open up your mindset to the world of astrology. I highly encourage you to do so. My birth chart reading was one of the biggest things that gave me that push to book my ticket to Bali. I'm going to leave you all with this. Rachel, during my reading, was the last person I spoke to before I booked the ticket. So, I encourage you to follow your fun, whatever that is for you. Enjoy this episode. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you left me a 5-star rating, left a review on Apple Podcasts, and shared this episode with anybody you think would benefit from hearing from it. As always, in case nobody told you, I'm proud of you, I'm rooting for you, and you got this. Thanks, guys. Until next time.